the 14th of February 1933. A single, blood-stained ace of spades is dropped in front of Dutch Schultz, the man who'd killed 40 people, and it makes him go pale. He had sent 12 of his deadliest hitmen into a basement to finish Bumpy Johnson. They had the guns, the numbers, and no witnesses. But Bumpy had something else, the darkness. 90 minutes later, only one survivor crawled out with a message that ended a war before it even started. Was Bumpy a madman or a strategic genius? This is the night he redefined power in Harlem. To understand what happened in that basement, you have to understand Harlem in 1933. This wasn't the Harlem of jazz and poetry anymore. The Great Depression had stripped the streets bare. Most families were scraping by on just $7 a week. In a world that desperate, hope becomes the only real currency. And in Harlem, that hope was found in the numbers game. You bet a nickel, you could win $50. It was the lifeblood of the community. Dutch Schultz saw that lifeblood and he wanted it, all of it. Dutch was a powerhouse from the Bronx, a man who had personally put over 40 people in the ground. He was a shark looking for a new ocean. But when he looked south toward Harlem, he ran into a wall he didn't expect. Bumpy Johnson. Take a look at Bumpy in 1932. Even in the middle of a national collapse, the man was flawless. A perfectly tailored suit, polished shoes, a crisp fedora. People often asked, why dress like a movie star while you're fighting in the gutters? Because for Bumpy, that suit wasn't for show, it was a psychological shield. In Harlem, image is power. When you walk into a room of men who want you dead, wearing a suit that costs more than their car, you're telling them, I define this world. You don't. He wasn't just muscle. He was a scholar of Shakespeare and philosophy who understood that respect is earned through discipline and poise. But there was an even bigger shadow looming over this fight, Lucky Luciano and the Mafia Commission. Dutch Schultz was a loose cannon, a man who'd kill his own partner over a breakfast tab, but Luciano and the festival wanted order. They wanted profit without the heat of a race war. Bumpy understood this dynamic better than Dutch ever could. He knew that if the Bronx mob started a total war in Harlem, the syndicate's entire New York operation would attract the kind of heat that kills businesses. Bumpy didn't just have a knife, he had leverage. He turned his personal struggle into an economic risk for the world's most powerful crime families. He made himself the one man the commission couldn't afford to ignore, and the one man Dutch Schultz couldn't afford to kill without starting a fire that would burn them all. Dutch brought the guns, but Bumpy brought the strategy. And on February 14th, those two worlds were about to collide. 4:32 a.m., Valentine's Day morning. Bumpy Johnson descends the narrow wooden stairs of the Cotton Club basement. The air down here is heavy, thick with the smell of stale rye and impending death. A single, naked light bulb hangs from the ceiling, swinging slowly, casting long, jagged shadows across the floor. Then, the sound. 12 distinct clicks, 12 safeties being switched off. 12 shadows step out from behind the crates of illegal liquor. At the center is Tommy, the executioner Vento. Tommy has killed 16 men at point-blank range. He's a man who likes to look into his victims' eyes as they fade. He smiles, the barrel of his revolver leveled at Bumpy's chest. Dutch sends his regards, Tommy whispers. Bumpy stands perfectly still. He doesn't reach for a gun. He doesn't flinch. He just looks around the room, slowly, as if he's counting the chairs for a poker game. Is that all he sent? Bumpy asks. Tommy's smile falters. He expects a plea. He expects a man to crumble when he's outnumbered 12-1. But Bumpy isn't crumbling. He's calculating. See, in the 1,932nd underworld, guns were for the loud and the impatient. But Bumpy Johnson worshipped a different kind of steel, the straight razor. In a cramped, pitch-black basement, a gun is a liability. The muzzle flash blinds you. The thunderous noise in a confined space deafens you. But a straight razor? It is silent. It is sharp. It never jams. To use a razor effectively, you have to get close enough to smell the fear on your enemy's breath. By carrying that blade, Bumpy was sending a message. I can touch you before you can even pull the trigger. It wasn't just a weapon. It was a psychological scalpel used to cut the confidence right out of 12 elite killers. Bumpy understood a secret that most men die before ever learning. Violence has a rhythm. Tommy thought he controlled the beat because he had the most guns. He was wrong. In that basement, Bumpy was the conductor. He knew that the man who stays calm while the world is ending is the one who dictates the pace. Tommy's finger tightens on the trigger. You got 5 seconds to beg. Bumpy doesn't beg. He doesn't move for his holster. He moves for the light. One movement, one punch. The hanging bulb shatters. Darkness, absolute, suffocating. Then the screaming starts. The first gunshot is wild, fired from a place of pure, animal panic. Then another. And another. Dutch's men, the deadliest hitmen in New York, suddenly become blind amateurs. In that pitch-black room, they aren't shooting at Bumpy. They're shooting at shadows, at sounds, and at their own terror. Tommy screams for them to hold their fire, but fear doesn't take orders. Every muzzle flash is a brief, strobe light window into a nightmare. They catch fleeting glimpses of their partners' faces, twisted in panic, before pulling the trigger on each other. Friendly fire becomes the deadliest weapon in the room. Bumpy, however, is a ghost. He moves through the crates and poker tables like he's walking through his own bedroom. He doesn't waste bullets. He uses his hands. He uses the crates. He uses the geography of a room he's played in 100 times. This is what psychologists call the home field paradox. When the lights go out, your brain loses its spatial map. It desperately tries to rebuild the world in the dark. But if the terrain is unfamiliar, that map collapses. You become paralyzed, or worse, you react with mindless, frantic violence. For Dutch's men, the Cotton Club basement was an alien death trap. For Bumpy, it was home. He didn't fight 12 men. He turned 12 men against themselves. He weaponized their lack of preparation and their sensory deprivation. He converted their numerical superiority into their greatest weakness. In the dark, 12 guns are just 12 more chances to hit the wrong person. The violence lasts exactly 3 minutes. 3 minutes that feel like 3 hours for the men trapped inside. Then the silence returns. When the basement door is finally kicked open from above and a sliver of light spills down those wooden steps, the scene is gruesome. 11 bodies, broken bones, gunshot wounds from their own revolvers, men unconscious and bleeding out on the cold floor. 11 of the most feared killers in the city, neutralized not by an army, but by a single man who understood that the mind is the first thing to break in the dark. Only one man is still conscious. Marty Delaney. He's slumped against the wall, hyperventilating, clutching a shaking gun. Bumpy is gone. He vanished into the shadows before the light could even find him. Marty is the only one left to deliver the message, and the story he's about to tell is going to turn Dutch Schultz's world upside down. 8:17 a.m. Marty Delaney stumbles into Dutch Schultz's headquarters on Arthur Avenue. He's covered in his own blood and the blood of 11 other men. Dutch is sitting there, eating breakfast, eggs, toast, coffee, reading the morning paper. He looks up and sees the ghost of his deadliest hitman. "Where are the others?" Dutch asks. His voice is like ice. Marty can't even find the words. He just shakes his head. "Dead," he Kung whispers. He let me live." Dutch stands up slowly. "He what?" "He let me live to give you this." Marty reaches into his jacket and pulls out a single playing card. The Ace of Spades. It's soaked in blood. He places it on the table. "He said to tell you, Harlem's not for sale, and if you send more men, send more cards." He's collecting a deck. The room goes dead silent. Dutch's lieutenants are waiting for the order to burn Harlem to the ground. But Dutch doesn't yell. He doesn't flip the table. He picks up the card, studies it, and smiles. A resignation smile. Why? Because Bumpy Johnson understood something most men in that business never do. If you kill everyone, you start a war. If you humiliate them, you end it. By leaving Marty Delaney alive, Bumpy wasn't being merciful. He was being surgical. Marty was the virus. He was the witness who would carry the trauma back to the Bronx. He was the one who would tell the story of the darkness, the razor, and the invisible ghost that picked off 12 elite killers like they were children. Marty's fear was contagious. It would infect every man in Dutch's crew until none of them wanted to set foot in Harlem again. But here is the real twist. Decades later, in the 1970 seconds, an old Cotton Club employee revealed a secret that changed the legend forever. Bumpy wasn't alone. He had 4 men waiting upstairs. The moment those 12 hitmen walked into the basement, Bumpy's men locked the heavy iron door from the outside. The 12 killers weren't just in a basement, they were in a cage. Bumpy didn't win because he was a better fighter. He won because he won the battle before it even started. He prepared the battlefield. He controlled the exits. He turned a trap into his own private theater of war. Dutch Schultz backed down because he recognized a superior mind. He knew that going to war with a man who is smarter than you, who has an entire neighborhood behind him, and who is prepared to die for his principles, it costs everything. And Dutch wasn't willing to pay that price. He dropped the card in the ashtray, lit it on fire, and walked away. Harlem was officially Bumpy's. Bumpy Johnson kept that Ace of Spades. He framed it. It hung in his office for 35 years, a silent reminder that respect isn't a gift, it's a conquest. We all face our own Dutch Schultz. Someone bigger, louder, and armed with more resources. But Bumpy proved that power belongs to the one who masters the environment and their own fear. Never go to war with someone who has a principle worth dying for. They don't play by your rules. If this legend moved you, drop a like. Will you be just another face in the crowd, or the master of your own darkness?